This story is titled, I was laying flowers on my wife's grave when her best friend showed up with a baby that looked just like me. She said, I need child support. I said, I need a lawyer. What I found in my wife's emails changed everything. I was at the cemetery like I always am on the first Sunday of the month. It's been almost a year since my wife, Melanie, passed. Car accident. Rainy night, hydroplaned off the road, gone before the paramedics even got there. It still doesn't feel real. She was my best friend, my partner in everything, the one person I thought I'd grow old with. Every month, I bring fresh daisies, her favorite, and I talk to her for a bit. It helps. So there I was, kneeling beside her headstone, brushing off some leaves, when I heard footsteps crunching behind me. I figured it was another visitor, maybe someone visiting a loved one nearby. But when I turned around, my stomach dropped. It was Jenna, Melanie's best friend since high school. We were never super close, but she was always around. Barbecues, holidays, even our honeymoon, Mel insisted she tag along for a couple days because Jenna was going through a breakup at the time. I always thought it was weird, but I trusted Mel. That was kind of my thing, trusting her no matter what. Anyway, Jenna wasn't alone. She was carrying a baby, a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 months old. And when I looked at him, really looked, I felt like I'd just been sucker punched in the chest. That baby looked exactly like me. Same dark brown eyes. Same dimples. Even the weird little swirl in his hair that my mom always said made me look like a cartoon character. And before I could even process what I was seeing, Jenna says, we need to talk. I need child support. I swear to God I thought I was being pranked. I just stood there, mouth open, probably looking like a complete idiot. Then, without missing a beat, I said the first thing that popped into my head. I need a lawyer. She didn't laugh, didn't get offended. Just stood there like she expected that response. Like this was all some twisted errand she'd planned. I left the cemetery without saying another word. But that night, I opened Melanie's old laptop, and what I found in her emails changed everything. I'll be honest, I sat there staring at her laptop for a good 15 minutes before I even opened it. It still had the little sticker she put on it that said, not all those who wander are lost, that cheesy Lord of the Rings quote she loved. Felt wrong, like I was about to dig into something sacred. But after the bomb Jenna dropped on me, I wasn't about to just sit in the dark. It was password protected, of course. But after 5 years of marriage, I knew enough to guess it. Her birthday, and the name of her favorite dog growing up, Charlie0829. First try. First thing I noticed? She hadn't logged into that thing in months, since before she died, but her email was still syncing. Thousands of unread messages, but one folder stood out. Private. Tucked neatly among her inbox like it was just another work label. I clicked it, expecting maybe old diary entries or conversations with her therapist. Instead, I found dozens of emails to and from Jenna. Some dated back 2 years. The subject lines made my stomach flip. You can't keep this a secret forever. He's going to notice eventually. I'm not sure I can live with this. The emails weren't just friendly check-ins. These were the digital equivalent of whispered panic. I read one where Melanie wrote, I still think about telling him. Every time I see his face, I feel like I'm lying to him. I don't know how much longer I can pretend. Pretend what? Mel? Another message from Jenna read, he wouldn't forgive either of us. Especially if he finds out how long it went on. You said it was over, but is it really? I just sat there, rereading that line over and over. How long what went on? That's when the pieces started to slide into place. The weird distance Melanie had toward the end. The late nights she blamed on work. The fact that Jenna hadn't cried at the funeral. At all. She was more focused on avoiding my eye contact than mourning. I kept digging, and that's when I found the photo. Melanie. In bed. Not alone. And not with me. The photo wasn't graphic or anything. It wasn't that kind of picture. But it didn't need to be. Melanie was laying in bed, clearly at home, hair pulled up like she always wore it to sleep. Next to her, half covered by the blanket, was someone holding the camera out for a selfie. Only the arm and part of the shoulder were visible. No face. But there was a tattoo. A small, faded compass rose on the inside of the bicep. My heart stopped. I knew that tattoo. I'd seen it before. On Jenna. That was all the confirmation I needed. At first, I felt sick. Physically nauseous. I had to get up and walk around the house just to keep from throwing up. I kept telling myself I had to be missing something, that there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was old, from before we were together? But no, that was our bed. That was our comforter. And in the corner of the pic? My flannel hoodie, draped over the chair. She used to steal it all the time. This wasn't before me. This was during me. I sat back down and started clicking through every thread with Jenna. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for the truth. And it didn't take long to find it. One email from Melanie read, "I should have ended things when we got married. But being with her always felt easy. Like something I could fall back into. I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't plan for a baby. I didn't want one. And now I'm stuck." Another one from Jenna, just a few months before the crash. "You promised me we'd raise him together. I never asked you to lie to him. That was your choice. But if something happens to you, I won't keep playing this game. He deserves to know who the father is." That one hit me like a freight train. Melanie wasn't just sleeping with her best friend. She'd been living a whole second life right under my nose. And she died before telling me any of it. Left me holding the pieces. And now I wasn't even sure if I was a grieving husband or an oblivious donor. Sleep was out of the question that night. I sat on the couch in the dark, laptop still open on the coffee table, that last email glowing like it was mocking me. I couldn't stop asking myself the same question. Is that baby even mine? Part of me wanted to believe this was all just a horrible misunderstanding. That Melanie had made some dumb choices, but the kid, if he was mine, deserved the truth. And if he wasn't mine, then why the hell did Jenna show up at the cemetery asking for child support? That's when something clicked. I pulled out the bottom drawer of Melanie's desk, the one where we kept all the boring stuff: insurance, mortgage docs, medical bills. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I figured if she was hiding something, she probably hadn't just kept it all digital. After a few minutes of digging, I found a manila folder labeled medical. Inside were her checkup records, old prescriptions, receipts from the OBGYN, and then one thin envelope, torn open across the top. It was a paternity test. My hands started shaking before I even pulled out the paper. At the top, it had Jenna's full name listed as the mother. Father, unknown, potential father, not tested. What the hell? Why would Melanie have a copy of Jenna's paternity test? That's when it hit me. Mel must have been trying to confirm if the baby was mine without telling me. Maybe she grabbed a hair from my comb. Maybe she was planning to test it secretly. But she never followed through. The form was dated 2 months before she died. So either she got scared, or something else happened. At that point, I realized I had 2 options. Call Jenna and try to talk it out like adults, or lawyer up and get some real answers. The next morning, I called my friend David. He's a family law attorney. Not the type who deals with scandal or drama, but he owed me one. I told him everything. And the first thing he said, "You need a DNA test. Now." And then he asked, "You said she asked for support, right? Did she file anything officially?" That's when I checked the mail and found a letter from her attorney sitting in my box, postmarked 2 days after the cemetery. She wasn't bluffing. She was suing me for paternity. Holding that letter felt like holding a live grenade. I sat on the front steps for a solid hour, just staring at my name printed on the envelope. It was real. She wasn't bluffing. Jenna had filed for child support, officially. She was taking me to court to force me to claim a baby I didn't even know existed until a few days ago. The first thing I did was call David back. I scanned him the paperwork, and within minutes, he called me, already sounding pissed. "She's not just asking for child support," he said. "She's trying to establish paternity and back payments. If the court assumes you're the dad, she could be entitled to support going back to the day the baby was born. This could get messy." Great. So now I wasn't just a grieving widower. I was a potential deadbeat dad in the eyes of the law. David set me up with a private lab that afternoon to get a legal DNA test done. Not the cheap drugstore kind, but the court-admissible version. I swabbed my cheek, handed over the sample, and walked out of there feeling like I was in some ridiculous daytime talk show. You are not the father. At least, that's what I hoped I'd hear. But I wasn't just sitting on my hands waiting. I needed answers. Not just about the baby, but about them. Melanie and Jenna. How long had this been going on? Why keep it secret? And if Jenna really thought the baby was mine, why not just come to me like a human being instead of pulling a legal grenade pin? I started scrolling back through my old texts with Melanie, looking for anything I might have missed. I found one thread from about a year before her death that seemed harmless at the time. Me, you still going to Jenna's this weekend? Mel, yeah, girls' night. Might stay the night, so don't wait up. She stayed at Jenna's a lot, now that I thought about it. Sometimes whole weekends. I used to joke that they were secretly married, and she'd just roll her eyes and laugh it off. Looking back, I wasn't joking. I was right. The test results came in 3 days later. I sat in my car outside the lab, envelope in my lap, heart going 1,000 beats a minute. I opened it. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The baby was mine, and I had no idea how. You ever get news so big your brain just stalls? That's what happened when I read that result. 99.99%. No mistake. The baby Jenna brought to Melanie's grave, that little boy with my eyes, was mine. And yet I still couldn't figure out when. When did this happen? How did it happen? I mean, I had never cheated. Not once. Not even close. And as weird as it sounds, I never slept with Jenna. We were barely friends. Always kind of kept each other at arm's length, probably because we both knew we were competing for Melanie's attention in different ways. But now I had proof. That baby was mine. And that could only mean one thing. Jenna and I slept together, and I didn't even remember it. I didn't drink much, and I'd never blacked out in my life. But my mind went straight to the last time the three of us were all together, Melanie's birthday party, about 1.5 years before she died. I remembered that night because Melanie got really drunk. Like, couldn't walk straight drunk. I wasn't far behind. Jenna came over to help us clean up afterward, and we all crashed in the living room. That was the last thing I remembered. So I called Jenna. I don't know why, I think I just needed to hear her voice. I needed her to say, yes, we hooked up, and here's when. Something. Anything. She picked up after the 3rd ring. Is this about the test? She asked, calm as ever. You knew it was mine. I always suspected, she said, like she was talking about the weather. But Melanie swore she used protection. And then she told me not to say anything. Did we sleep together? I asked, cutting through the crap. There was silence on her end. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. I thought you knew. That night after her birthday, you and I were alone for a while. You don't remember? I stood there in my kitchen, gripping the counter like it might hold me up. No, I said quietly. I don't. Well, she said, you were pretty out of it. Melanie went to bed early. I figured. I don't know. You didn't say stop. I couldn't breathe. That wasn't a hookup. That was something else entirely. I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, still holding the phone, feeling like the ground just dropped out from under me. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking. You figured I didn't say stop? I repeated, almost in a whisper. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Look, Jenna said, suddenly defensive. I'm not saying it was planned or anything. We were both drunk. Things happened. But the thing is, I didn't remember it. At all. And for something like that to just vanish from my memory? That wasn't normal. And even if I was drunk, I never would have done that. Not to Melanie. Not with Jenna. Especially not without knowing. You do realize what you're saying, right? I asked, voice low and tight. You're telling me we had sex, and I didn't know. I didn't agree to it. And now I'm being sued for the result of something I wasn't even conscious for. I didn't force you, she snapped. But it was too late. That guilt was already in her voice. I hung up. I couldn't take another word of it. I sat down on the floor right there in the kitchen, still in my work clothes, and just stared at nothing. Everything felt blurry and too sharp at the same time. I wasn't just grieving a dead wife anymore. I wasn't just shocked about a secret baby. Now I was realizing I might have been violated, and that no one, including the woman I married, ever said a word about it. And for what? To keep some broken secrets safe? To protect Jenna? Was Melanie protecting me by keeping quiet? Or was she just protecting herself? That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. Instead, I dug through more of Melanie's things, her journals, the notes on her phone, even old text messages from our cloud backup. And tucked into the Notes app, in a locked file I cracked with her usual passcode, I found an unsent letter. To me. It started with, if you're reading this, I guess I didn't have the guts to tell you the truth before I was gone. My heart was pounding again. Because finally, I was about to find out what really happened. The letter wasn't long, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, but every word felt like a brick to the chest. It was written about 6 weeks before the accident. I don't know if she ever meant to send it. Maybe she wrote it and panicked. Maybe she was waiting for the right time. Or maybe she was hoping I'd never see it. But I did. If you're reading this, I guess I didn't have the guts to tell you the truth before I was gone. And for that, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. Already my hands were trembling. I read the next part slowly, like I was bracing for a punch I knew was coming. What happened at night after my birthday was never supposed to happen. You drank too much. I went to bed. Jenna stayed behind. She told me the next morning what she did, And I swear, I lost my mind. But I also didn't stop being her friend. And that's on me. I had to stop reading for a second. I couldn't process it. Melanie knew. She knew Jenna crossed a line, knew she crossed me, and she still stayed close with her like nothing happened. I kept reading. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. She didn't want the baby, then suddenly she did. And then she said it might be yours. But we both agreed to keep it from you. I didn't want to blow up your world over something you couldn't even remember. I told myself I was protecting you. But the truth is, I was also protecting myself from the shame, from losing you, from admitting I let something horrible happen and didn't say anything. And I've been living with that guilt every single day. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. I set the phone down. I felt like I'd just been shoved into some alternate version of my own life. For over a year, I've been mourning Melanie, missing her, crying for her, putting flowers on her grave like some hopeless romantic idiot. Meanwhile, she'd been keeping this kind of secret. She let me grieve her with half a heart and a whole lie. And now the person who violated me was coming after me legally. I stood up and looked in the mirror. Something in my face looked different. Colder. Tighter. It was the moment I stopped mourning and started fighting. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was done crying over someone who let me live in the dark, someone who knew what was done to me and still chose to say nothing. I was in fight mode now. And I had a lawyer, proof, and something Jenna didn't count on the truth. I sent David everything. The letter, the emails, the test results, the text from Jenna where she basically admitted to what happened. He called me an hour later, dead serious. We're not just talking about child support anymore, he said. If you want, we can flip this entire situation. File for full custody. Report what happened that night. Hell, even press charges. This isn't just a paternity case anymore, man. This is criminal. That word hit hard. Criminal. I'd spent so long blaming myself for not seeing the signs, for not remembering, for being stupid. But now, finally, someone was calling it what it was. I told him I wanted to do it. All of it. I didn't just want to fight Jenna in court. I wanted her exposed. I wanted everything on the table. Not out of revenge, but because I couldn't stomach the idea of my son growing up around someone like her. Yeah, my son. As screwed up as all of this was, I couldn't stop thinking about that kid. I'd only seen him once, but now I knew he was mine. And I couldn't just pretend he didn't exist, not when the courts were involved. Not when he'd grow up one day wondering where his dad was. So I made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to take responsibility for the one innocent person in this mess. David drafted the paperwork to file for full custody. The foundation was strong. We had a paternity confirmation, documented history of deception, and potentially illegal conduct surrounding conception. But I also knew how courts worked. It wasn't just about evidence, it was about narrative. And right now, Jenna's story was already out there. Single mom, abandoned by child's father. Mine? Drugged, deceived, and grieving. We needed more. That's when David asked, "Do you think Jenna told anyone else what happened? Anyone who could testify to her side of the story?" I remembered something then. A mutual friend, Stacy. She was close to Jenna. Kind of loud. Drank too much. Always gossiped. I decided to call her. And what she told me next nearly knocked me over. I didn't expect much when I called Stacy. Maybe a little gossip. Maybe some vague comment that hinted at the truth. But what I got? It was the smoking gun. She picked up, surprised to hear from me. After some awkward small talk, I just laid it out. I know about the baby. I know he's mine. I know what Jenna did that night. There was a pause. Long enough that I almost thought she hung up. Then she said, "Oh, so you finally found out." That one sentence changed everything. It confirmed that Jenna knew. That Melanie knew. And that other people knew too. I had been walking around like some clueless idiot, grieving a perfect love that didn't exist, while people in our orbit were trading this secret like it was inside drama. "She told you?" I asked. "Not everything," Stacy said. "Just bits and pieces. She was drunk one night, and she said something about how you weren't supposed to remember anything. I thought she was being dramatic. I figured you two had a thing." "We didn't," I snapped. "I don't even remember it happening." She went quiet again. Then, finally, "Jesus Christ. Can you say that in court?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. But a few seconds later, she said, "Yeah, I will." That was it. The final piece. A third-party statement, confirming Jenna had boasted about what she did while knowing I had no memory of it. David was ready to go nuclear now. Within a week, we filed everything. Full custody. a motion to dismiss her child support claim, and, after careful wording from David, a formal statement indicating we were prepared to pursue criminal charges if Jenna didn't back off. She folded faster than I expected. Her lawyer reached out, suddenly full of charm and compromise. They offered to drop the child support request if I agreed not to pursue custody or criminal action. But it was too late for that. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my son. After months of legal back and forth, I won full custody, sole decision-making rights. Jenna was granted supervised visitation if she ever showed up for it. And me? I'm raising a little boy now. A boy who didn't ask to be born into chaos. A boy who, when he laughs, has the exact same dimple I see in the mirror. The truth nearly destroyed me. But now, every morning, when he runs to hug me, I realize something. Melanie may have lied. Jenna may have taken something from me. But they gave me him. And I'll never let him live in anyone's shadow but mine.